Hey everyone, it's Mark. Welcome back to the ultimate recap of 3 years worth of dishwasher knowledge that I didn't want in the first place. So welcome back everyone. It is September 2021, which is more than 3 years after that first video and about 2 years since part 2. And I have heard from so many people that have done my goofy little repair that I threw together, and I'm shocked that one person, much less multiple people, did my weird idea and it seemed to work. I mean, it's worked for me for 3 years. My pump is just starting to give me problems now, so I don't know yet if the bushing I made is wearing out, if the bearing has worn out, or if it's just another problem completely. I mean, motors wear out for reasons other than the bearings, so it could be any of that. But to get ahead of it, I ordered a new pump. So once I get the dishwasher torn apart, I will be tearing apart the other one and doing sort of an autopsy to see how everything held up. What most people will do when they're faced with their motor going out is they're going to get online and they're just going to want to get the cheapest one of these they can. And that's exactly what I've done. The Whirlpool brand is, if I remember correctly, $130, $150, something like that. These are about $50 and they're available all over the place. And I took it apart and it looks completely identical inside to the original. I've since found out that the best count I can come up with is about 330 different dishwasher models that use this across Whirlpool, Kenmore, and IKEA branded. I didn't even know IKEA had appliances. I've heard anecdotal evidence that it could include like KitchenAids or something too. I'm not sure. I haven't dug as deep as humanly possible, but with some amount of research, I've found 300 some models that match up. And I will show the complete list here. So if you would like to pause it and look for yours, you may. I probably won't list all of them in the description. Who knows? Maybe I will. But there's also a whole list of replacement part numbers that refer back to this. So I'll put that whole list up right now. As far as I can tell, all of these OEM numbers are essentially this. So there might be little minor differences. I don't know what they are. I can't find them. So as for right now, don't fear buying the cheapo replacement instead of the Whirlpool branded one. They're all the same inside. And we saw how well the Whirlpool one held up. All right, so this is sort of like those phones at the cell phone store where like it's completely hollow inside and it's just for display, because I've already taken out the guts here. So I'm going to turn the camera around. I'm going to show you all the measurements I've done, what I've figured out, and what I'm going to preemptively do to upgrade this new pump so that I don't ever have to tear into it again. All right, so for the first step, since I'm not going to recommend necessarily people go back to the first video and then watch the second one and come to the third one. If you end up here on part 3, it's fine. You're not going to miss anything. It's like Halloween part 3 with the weird silver shamrock crap. So what you do, this comes apart just with a little short turn. I like to put a little scratch mark here and here, or you could do a Sharpie or something, just so you know which way to line it back up, because every time I forget. So then once in there, you're going to see this. You want to take out these 4 Phillips screws, and then when you pull it out, you're going to have this. This impeller just unscrews, lefty-loosey, and there's all your pieces. Now you still have a bushing stuck down in here. I showed how I got it out the last time. I'll show that again. All right, so now the bushings are held in there fairly tight. All I do is I just use the end of the motor and just kind of push it out like that. Now it has an O-ring around the base. As far as I can tell, the O-ring has no purpose other than to retain this. It doesn't have any sealing purpose. So let me pull out my measurements, discuss this real quickly. This is the factory bushing right here. Real simple measurements if you wanted to try to make one. I've now heard there's 3D printer files. People have been making them that way. If you wanted to make one, machine it, do whatever, draw it up. It's 5mm, 5mm. 10mm OD here, 13.5 OD here, and a 5mm through hole. Part of the reason I got so confused the last time is because I forgot that I'm in like just about the only country in the world that's dumb enough to use imperial system of measurement instead of metric system. Once I got out a metric micrometer, it made so much more sense, and it was like 5, 5, 10, 5, 13.5. There are a few options for replacement bearings. The one I purchased, I don't have drawn on here because, as you know, it needed some tubing to take up the space. It needed drilling out of the plastic. And I know most people don't have a selection of large drill bits and a selection of aquarium tubing and all that. So I'm trying to come up with a way to make this thing more robust that anybody can do just ordering a few parts. If I'm using McMaster as a guide, they have some 10mm bearings, both flanged and unflanged, and that will fit down into this small diameter right here. Okay, so if you measure the inside of here, get about 475 thousandths or so. That converts to about 12 mil. And this, remember, is only 10 mil. You might be wondering, how does that stay? That's what the O-ring's for. So anyway, as you can see, it's 10mm bearing. There's a 10mm roller bearing. There's this 10mm bearing without a flange. All of those are gonna be so loose and sloppy in there that I don't recommend doing that. Now that was originally what I thought was like the silver bullet. Like, oh, all you gotta do, now that I know the metric dimensions, just get a metric bearing, pop it in there. But I think that's gonna be pretty small. So you go out to this bigger diameter that on here is 13.5mm. And you can't get a 13.5mm bearing, you can get 14. You measure the inside diameter of that, it's 14.2mm. So there's gonna be a little slop, but that is what I've decided to order. And you also gain the benefit of getting an extra millimeter wide. So I have ordered some of these. That is trade number 605. It is going to fit in this larger diameter, and there's gonna be a little slop, so I might have to entertain the idea of putting a piece of heat shrink tubing around it. The bearings I've ordered a few to look at. Turns out they're really cheap, they're really easy to find because these are all common sizes for radio controlled cars. So that's basically where I'm going to leave things today. As of now, I got a $50 replacement pump, get a couple 605 bearings, and slap it back together, and hopefully it'll last way more than these graphite bushings, even brand new. I don't even think it's worth putting them in there, because all they're going to do is wear out and then leave me disappointed at the worst possible time. So there we go. That's it for today. We'll see you next week. Hey everyone, I'm just about to tear this dishwasher apart. I just wanted to show you how you can diagnose if the recirculation pump is your problem. So, just put it on normal or any setting. Start. Close. You're going to hear it start to fill, and this will take a minute or two. Once it's full, you'll hear it click off, and if everything's working, you'll hear it start to run, and that's the sound of the sprayers going. If you just hear it click off and it's silent, that means your recirculation pump is not turning. If the problem is a worn bushing, you should be able to kind of shake it loose, and I'll show you how I do that and how I determine that's what the problem is and not another problem such as like maybe a circuit board issue not sending the power or relay or whatever to the motor. So as soon as this is done filling, I'll show you my high-tech method for diagnosing that. Okay, turned off, nothing's happening. So this is what I do. If your counter is lower and it's a much tighter fit, this might not work. Okay, so usually that works. If that doesn't work, I'll show you plan B. Just realized you could probably see me wearing socks and flip-flops. No comments, I understand. I just got out of bed. Cut me some slack. I've got the cover off. And now I've got a little pry bar. You could do this with a broom handle or about anything. But the recirculation pump, I don't know if you can see it, but it's back there. So what I'm gonna do is just try to bump it with this. There. So we know it's those bearings going out again. So now that the dishwasher's running, I'm gonna have some coffee and then we'll go out to the shop and I'll show you how we fix it this time. So the dishwasher made it through that cycle. I unloaded the dishes, I'm gonna run them again, but I just wanna show how I get this thing pulled out, flip it over, take the pump out. So I'm not going to get too specific on the process of pulling out the dishwasher because it's different in every house depending who installed it. In my case, since I installed this one, I made it easy and I just have a power cord that plugs in, a flexible hose that screws in, and then the drain hose. A lot of houses have a rigid copper line going to it or that flexible copper. I hate that. For a while I was installing dishwashers for Best Buy. I probably installed 200 dishwashers, and every single time I'd cut that copper off, install a flexible hose so you could do this. Instead of laying on your back, turn in a wrench, loosen it like a tiny little bit at a time, and then start stripping water. And if you're gonna put in a dishwasher, do it this way. This might be metric, but 5/16 works. And this hose clamp, depending if you've had it off or someone else has had it off, this might be the kind where you have to squeeze it, or it might even be the kind that is crimped on. You just kind of do whatever you have to do. And oh yeah, when you unhook that, it's going to start dripping. There she is. Probably the most famous dishwasher pump in the world. All right, we're back. I've got old pump, I've got new pump. Let's get into this. Okay, so here's the old pump. I think I already know what failed. So I had people in the early videos saying that the plastic bearing was a dumb idea because it would fall apart. I thought they were wrong, and I still think I did pretty well. It's been over 3 years, which is longer than the factory one lasted. I mean, I don't know at what point you declare complete success, but we beat the OEM. Yep, my bearing fell apart. Let me go hose this off, I'll be right back. All right, there's what happened. Honestly, if I didn't lose one of these bearings when I took it apart, you could totally just snap it back together and put it back in and it would probably work again. But I have a new solution, so that's what we're gonna look into today. So first thing I want to mention, I don't see any difference between these two. If you can get 3 of these for the price of 1 of these, it certainly doesn't look 3 times as crappy. So let's see how my bronze bushing held up. Remember, this has been in for 2 years and some. Oh boy, that's what's left of my bronze bushing. Totally just ate the whole thing. I mean, granted, it lasted longer than the graphite version, but man, it sure ate it. I honestly didn't think that would happen, but that explains why the ball bearing one fell apart. This is made to just ride on the bushing, which in the case of the original would have been graphite, and it's made to run up against that. Since I did the bronze one, it was still doing the same thing, but apparently this was a little bit more abrasive on the bronze than it was on the graphite. Once that started to wear away and this was able to migrate farther and farther up, it just pulled that bearing apart. Maybe they weren't so crazy with the graphite. I mean, yeah, it wore out really fast, but man, it didn't get eaten like the bronze did. And normally when you'd use a bronze bushing, oil light or otherwise, you'd put some lubrication on there, and this is constantly underwater, so maybe that's why. Yeah, and I said I was going to show how to get that bearing out of the bottom. There we go. All right, let's talk new bearings. I'm not going to go into the brands that I purchased. You can get whatever brand you want. I found mine on eBay. Like I said, these are common for radio-controlled cars, so they're very affordable. These are the flanged ones. These are the unflanged ones. These are those. These are those. Those are the originals. All right, so I was talking about how I thought these little ones would be the answer because they're the same size as that small diameter and they have a flange, so I figured they'd just snap right in. Problem is, as I described earlier, there's a lot of slop in there, so if I try to put that in there, it's just as loose. There's nothing to really hold it in. So then I have the same problem with those, obviously the same thing without the flange. But look how tiny that is. I mean, that's just, I feel like way too small in precision for a thing that's gonna be running at a high speed underwater every day or every other day. So those are out. Next up were the 13 mil. These are slightly smaller than that OD, but again, same story. That leads us to the 605s. So the question is, how do you get that to fit nicely in there? And again, I'm trying to do this simply so that somebody without a whole workshop can do this. Okay, I'm gonna try this. I got a little piece of heat shrink tubing. Okay, I cut that shrink tubing about 1 mil longer. Now I'm gonna shrink it down. Okay, so you see it's kind of wrapped over. Now I think if I put it in this way, it should go in. And I think I can use this as a press. Yeah, that worked. One more thing though. Now I know how hard this rubs on the bushing enough to completely wear away that bronze one. I feel like I want some sort of thrust washer in there. So I'm gonna think on that. I'll bring it back. All right, I didn't have the right size washers, so I made them. It's the benefits of having a machine shop at your house. Since most people don't have that, I will provide the dimensions of these washers in the description. And the reason I think these are gonna be nice is because it will space them off the bearing a little bit and make them thrust against the center race instead of out here or on the shield or something else. Okay, and you want to give the impeller a good tightening before you put it in, because once you put this in, then you won't be able to tighten that back on. You want to make sure your washer stays on. This is magnetic, but the washers are stainless, so it's probably easier to just bring the motor to the middle. And don't put the O-rings back in. They are no longer needed. So now that does have the ability to move a little bit, but it's captured between those two washers. So hopefully either way it decides to slide, it will be just turning against the bearing and not wearing on anything else. The one thing that will be interesting to see, and I'll continue to update in the description of this video, longevity. These are ceramic ball bearings, so the balls will not rust. These are lubricated inside and have rubber shields to keep stuff out. Now, anytime you have something underwater, whether it's sealed or not, water will probably find a way in. Hopefully, as long as most of the lubrication stays in there and no actual bits of food particles get into that bearing, hopefully it should continue to run. I guess back into the house, put it back together. All right, so in summation, what did we learn? Graphite bushings that come with it last about 2 years maybe. The ball bearing that I threw together in part 1 of this seems to hold up just fine. It failed this time, but it wasn't the reason it failed. Because the other thing we learned is that the bronze bushing with no lubrication and with thrust against it will wear it out. That bushing I made that started off looking like this, now looks like that. So the bronze did not hold up well, but again, I think it was just a thrust issue. If I had some sort of thrust washer, maybe it would have helped, but it was ceramic against bronze, and I guess now we know ceramic wins. The next thing we learned, bearing trade number 605, plus a little piece of heat shrink tubing, fits perfect. To recap what I did there, I took the bearing, those are 5 millimeters wide. I cut about 6-7 millimeter of heat shrink tubing, pushed it flush to one side, overhanging the back, shrunk it down so it sort of wrapped around, and that allowed me to press it into place without just pushing the tubing back off. So that worked really well. I did need a couple washers to use as thrush washers. I will put the information of those here, but they definitely should be stainless, pretty close to 5 millimeter through hole, and you want the outside to be similar in size to the center race of the 605 bearing, not big enough to be rubbing on stuff. I think that's everything I've learned so far. I had no intention of going down the dishwasher rabbit hole. When I did that video, I thought nobody's gonna care about this, and boy was I wrong. That video had like 70,000 views or something, and the next closest one was a video about my lathe. The third was video part 2 of the dishwasher. And like the most popular video of my 53 Chevy project is like 2,000 views. I mean, it's just like orders of magnitude less popular. And that was the stuff I planned on doing with this channel. So life throws you weird curveballs. Apparently now I'm the dishwasher guy. This is everything in this video that I know up till now. I can't make any guarantees about how this new thing's gonna hold up, but I feel pretty good about it. As I said, I will keep updates in the bottom of the video. But as of now, I'm gonna say that's the best repair. Until you see another video from me, I'm standing by that. Thanks for coming with me on this journey. I didn't expect it to be a 3-year journey. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.